What if I told you that Max Verstappen just made a statement that could completely change how we see the 2025 Formula One season? The four-time world champion didn't just acknowledge McLaren's superiority, he also revealed some deeply worrying technical details about his own car that might explain why Red Bull has been losing ground so dramatically. And the most shocking part? He practically admitted that his recent results are nothing more than an illusion, hiding the real balance of power on track. After another race where he somehow managed to outscore both McLaren drivers, Max caught everyone off guard by downplaying his chances of winning a fifth consecutive title. In Singapore, a track where he had never won before, he kept Lando Norris behind for the entire race. But what he said afterwards painted a completely different picture from what we all saw on paper. His confession was so blunt that even the most experienced analysts were stunned. Over the last 3 Grand Prix, Verstappen has scored 68 points, outscoring both Oscar Piastri, who's leading the championship with only 27 in that span, and Norris, who's picked up 45. Those numbers cut Max's deficit to Piastri from 104 points down to 63, and he's now just 41 behind Norris. On paper, that looks like a serious comeback, a champion roaring back into contention. But are those numbers telling the truth? Here's where the first big problem appears, the one that could completely destroy Red Bull's remaining hopes. Verstappen revealed that his Red Bull is facing major technical issues, far beyond what anyone outside the team imagined. During the entire race in Singapore, he was battling gearbox problems, something that's been haunting the RB21 all season long. He described the 62 laps as pure problem management, constantly dealing with shifting failures and an unstable balance that made the car unpredictable. But hold on, it gets worse. The most revealing part came when he was asked about his real title chances. Verstappen was brutally honest, saying that Lando Norris was much faster in Singapore and that the only reason he could stay ahead was the circuit itself. The tight, twisty layout of Marina Bay simply didn't allow for overtaking. On any other track, he said, Norris would have passed him easily. That admission is devastating for Red Bull because it suggests the performance gap isn't small or situational. It's deep, structural, and very real. The champion admitted that as soon as he came out of the pits after his first stop, Norris immediately showed far stronger pace, lap times that Max simply couldn't match. And that reveals an uncomfortable truth. Red Bull might still be scoring decent points here and there, capitalizing on track layouts and chaotic race conditions, but when it comes to pure speed, McLaren's still ahead. In other words, Verstappen might be winning small battles, but he's losing the war. And things get even more concerning when you look at the bigger picture. Remember that new floor Red Bull introduced back in Monza? It was hyped as the big savior, the upgrade that would finally allow them to fight McLaren on equal terms. Sure, it brought improvements, but not nearly enough. Verstappen himself admitted there was progress, but emphasized that they're still a long way from matching their rivals' level. But maybe the most fascinating part of all this isn't technical. It's psychological. Because instead of sounding frustrated or angry about McLaren's rise, Verstappen went out of his way to praise them. He called their comeback remarkable and even said their recovery was proof that anything's possible in Formula One. That's not something you expect to hear from a four-time champion who's used to crushing everyone. So what's going on here? Is Max really at peace with the idea that he might not win his 5th title this year? Or is this all part of a deeper mind game, trying to lower the pressure on himself and his team while they quietly work on solutions behind the scenes? Whatever it is, the answer could shape not just this championship, but the entire future of Red Bull's dominance. Mathematically, Verstappen's still in it. There are plenty of races left. And a 63-point gap to Piastri isn't impossible to overcome. But listening to Max talk, you get the feeling he knows exactly how hard that road will be. Because if he's right about McLaren's superior pace, then it's not just about catching up. It's about reinventing a car concept that's starting to show its limits. The RB21 has been tricky all year. Unstable balance, unpredictable rear end, constant issues with downshifts and traction. Verstappen's been fighting the car more often than driving it freely. And when you have someone like Norris, calm, confident, and driving a McLaren that seems planted and alive in every corner, that difference shows. If Singapore really masked McLaren's true advantage, then the upcoming races could be brutal for Red Bull. Circuits like Suzuka, Austin, and Interlagos will expose that raw performance gap, and Verstappen knows it. His brutal honesty could be read in two ways, as a sign of maturity and realism, or as a quiet admission that this title might already be slipping away. Maybe it's a bit of both. He's acknowledging what the data already says. The McLaren is the new benchmark. That line echoed through the paddock like an earthquake. For years, Red Bull was the standard, the unbeatable machine everyone else chased. But now, the hunter has become the hunted. And that's not something Red Bull's used to dealing with. And Verstappen's praise for McLaren's recovery carries a powerful symbolic weight. This is a team that spent years lost in the midfield, broken by management chaos, technical confusion, and a string of failed projects. But they rebuilt. They found a formula that works, literally and figuratively, and they're back on top. In a way, Max's comments might also be a message to his own team. If McLaren could rise from the ashes and become world beaters again, then Red Bull can too. Maybe that's his way of reminding everyone in Milton Keynes that this isn't the end of an era. At least, not yet. But time is running out. Every race that passes without a major step forward makes the dream of a fifth consecutive championship feel more distant. Verstappen's words sounded like both a warning and a wake-up call. To his engineers, his fans, and maybe even to himself. The fight for the title might be closer to over than anyone wants to admit, unless something dramatic happens fast. So what does this all mean? It might just mean we're witnessing the end of Red Bull's dominance. Or maybe we're watching the birth of a new phase in Verstappen's career. One where he's no longer just the relentless winner, but the veteran who's learned to face defeat head-on. His honesty might be the first step toward accepting a new reality in Formula One, one where McLaren is the team to beat. After years of absolute control, Red Bull now finds itself chasing shadows. They're the ones trying to close the gap. And for the first time in a long while, Verstappen isn't the unstoppable force. He's the one under pressure, trying to prove that his reign isn't over yet. Maybe that's why this version of Max feels different. He's calmer, more reflective, almost philosophical. Maybe he knows the winds are changing. Or maybe he's just playing the long game, quietly building momentum for one last charge in the final races. But whether this is the beginning of Red Bull's decline or just a temporary stumble, one thing's clear. The balance of power in Formula One is shifting again. And this time, it's McLaren leading the way. So now the question is, are we seeing the end of an era, or the calm before one of the greatest comebacks the sport has ever seen? Whatever the answer, one thing's certain. Verstappen's honesty has just made this championship a lot more interesting.